So let's get into it. Okay. Welcome, everyone. As you know, my name is Will. You can call me Contraband, and this is the Contraband Wagon where I'm changing the conversation on race. Thank you so much for joining me for yet another conversation series event where I'll be talking to a virtual stranger about the all controversial subject of race. And before I introduce Carrie over here, the wonderful Carrie Kaufman, my wonderful pain in the ass lesbian journalist, virtual stranger here, I just want to say thank you guys to all the contrabandits, my patrons, you guys who have been supporting me, helping me get to this point where in this critical moment in history, I'm able to kind of step up and share the work with them that I've been doing, these years to a wider audience. Thank you guys so much for supporting me and doing that. For all my subscribers here on Substack, I really appreciate you guys joining in the movement to create these conversations on race that are critical in this time. So thank you guys so much. And don't forget, anyone can be a part of the Contraband Wagon. All you have to do is go to my website, www.thecontrabandwagon.com. Click on the submit application button, okay? And you'll be able to fill out the very brief application, 30 seconds. I'll get back to you via email and we'll set up a 30-minute Zoom call where I can give you some background about me and the show. You can ask me any questions. We can collaborate about what we might discuss. And if we're both amenable, we'll schedule a date and time for your live appearance right here on Substack, okay? All the requirements is that you come with an open heart and an open mind. Those are the only two things, okay? If you can do that, you're welcome here, all right? Thank you, Under the Golden Boot, Luke, Robin, Angie, and CMDR. Cool. Thank you guys all for joining me here today for this conversation with the amazing Carrie Kaufman. Carrie, welcome to the Contraband Wagon.
Thank you. Finally, we get to do this. We've been going back and forth for a while, but it's great. Yeah.
Yes. And I am really excited to do it too and have the conversation with you. And I'm grateful that our schedules were able to align. All right.
We are busy people.
We are. And so let's start off this important conversation the same way that I start off the conversation with everybody I bring on the show, which is with the question, what is your evolution of race consciousness? And by that, I mean, just let me give you a little bit of background about what I mean so that everyone understands, right? Evolution of race consciousness, guys, means when did you first recognize that there was this thing called race, right? We're not born knowing about it. It's stamped on our birth certificates.
Oh, well.
And so when did you first gain conscious awareness of it? When did you realize it was connected to skin color? When did you realize that it was a hierarchical structure that kind of possibly dictated how you may be treated and how others may be treated, and might even dictate how experiences in your life happen? And how did that understanding change over the course of your life? So what, Carrie, is your evolution of race consciousness?
Well, okay. Such an easy question. So you're going to have to remind me of the ands or, the additions to the first question. But because I am 62 years old. So I was, 10, I think, when busing started. And when there were okay, let's go back, right? I was 5 when Martin Luther King was murdered. And I knew Martin Luther King was murdered because the news had to preempt the show that I wanted to watch, Leave It to Beaver, to be perfectly honest. And my mother told me that I couldn't watch Leave It to Beaver because they had preempted the show. And then she also said, again, when I asked, because I don't just take one answer, I always keep asking, she was like, they killed Martin Luther King. And I was like, are they the same people that had to preempt the show? Like, use they twice. And later on, I had my mom's cousin thought that was the funniest thing she'd ever heard. And she kept repeating the story. And later on, I was like, they kind of are.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, it's funny in multiple ways and ironic and all kinds of things. Yeah.
Like, I was kind of onto something when I was 5, even, even though it was an innocent question. but so that was so race, because I was born in the 60s. Race has always been something that has been out there that I've known about, right? And then there was busing, and I would watch that on the
Well,
news
hang on,
all the
before you go
time.
to bus, I'm gonna reel
Mm.
you back to that. I'm gonna
Okay,
reel you
fine,
right
fine,
on
fine,
back,
fine.
okay? Because you said you knew about it. What did you know about it at that age? What did you know?
That there were people, that there Martin Luther King, and other people were um marching for and fighting for civil rights. Now, like at that point, I didn't know about the March on Washington. I was like 7 months old when that happened. No, I was like 4 months old when it happened. Um, uh, and this is the interesting part, right? Like I had heard names of people. I watched the news, right?
Mhm.
Malcolm X, um, and my 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 7-year-old, 8-year-old, 9-year-old, 10-year-old understanding of these people was that they were terrorists, right? They were evil, because I was a white girl growing up in the 1960s and 70s, and that's
Yeah,
what was coming at me in through the news, through pop culture.
okay.
Like, oh my God, pop culture. You know, you look back on the TV shows, the black TV shows of the 70s, and they were groundbreaking because they had black people and black characters, but they were really, really problematic when you look back on them. And that was my introduction, right? Like there was all of this racist stuff coming at me. It really wasn't until I was older that I started to like see um that what I was getting was um propaganda,
Mm,
right?
okay.
That what
So
I
what
that
age can you pinpoint like when
I was in
that
my
was for
30s.
you?
I was in my
Okay.
30s. Can I pinpoint where that was for me?
Yeah, when you had that moment where you were like, wait a minute.
I was publishing a newspaper. I was in my 30s, and I was doing it was an evolution. There was never a moment. But I was doing I did a whole series on race in theater, because that's what the newspaper was for, the theater industry in Chicago. And and I interviewed a lot of people. It was really great. And uh, the black people I interviewed were thanking me, like, and I was like, okay, great, yeah, thank you, you're welcome. I think. And then I moved on and sort of like kept incorporating. I look back at those stories now and I'm like, I'm not very proud of those stories, right? Like they were written about black people from my white point of view.
Mhm.
I did not center them as I would now.
Hmm.
Um,
Interesting. Okay.
but it was the same thing as 70s TV. Thank you for at least saying what's going on here, right?
Yeah.
Um, and then in 2002, I moved to Flossmoor, Illinois. Flossmoor, Illinois is a mixed race town. There was a lot of white flight. There were a lot of white people who were like, no, we're not
Mhm.
doing this. We want to live in a place where we have neighbors who are different from us. And um, there are a lot of mixed race families that have moved to Flossmoor. And I moved into Flossmoor in 2002 thinking, I'm not really that racist. And I left 11 years later thinking, oh my God, I have learned so much about race and myself in the 11 years. Totally was not aware of my sort of like inner racism when I moved in. But that was for me, that was the best thing in the world to live in Flossmoor. It's like Mayberry, and it's got all the problems that a small town has, but it's like Mayberry, and it was a great place for my kids to grow up. And it's a diverse town, so, Flossmoor and Homewood. And that was the start of me going, oh, right. I remember talking to somebody about the fact that she went to Howard University. She got into an Ivy, and she also got into Howard. And I was like, so you chose Howard? What, are you okay? Are you good with that? And she was like, Howard was the best thing that ever happened to me. And I understood, sort of like what it was like for her to live in a world where she was the only one or one of two or whatever, and then suddenly go to Howard. Um, and there were moments like that exploded in my head, and I was like, oh, I see, got it, yeah.
Wow.
And I was one in Homewood and Flossmoor. Often I was the only white person or one of the few white people in the room. Like, I took a friend of mine bowling and to play pool. Actually, we went to the bowling alley to play pool, and she was from Chicago. And as we walked out, she was like, we were the only white people in there. And I'm like, welcome to Homewood. Like, I don't know what to say to you.
Yeah, well, I think it's a rare thing for racialized white people to experience, not as being the only racialized white person. It's not a common thing, right?
No, it's not a common thing.
Yeah. So
that's a short version of my evolution. Like, I kept, first of all, I was like, ooh, no, we can't, thugs, right? Like, I believed the stuff that was coming at me, and then I started to question it, and then I thought that I was pretty cool, and then I realized I wasn't at all. And and then I thought, okay, so the lesson here is just to keep listening, right? And this is me, right? I walk into rooms and I take the room if I want to, but I can also walk into rooms and nobody knows I'm there. And for me, that was the real lesson. If I'm walking into a room where people of color, Black people, Latino people, because a huge Latino population here, are talking and sharing their stories, I am not. I'm just listening.
So that was the
biggest thing.
That's something you learned from your evolution, huh?
Mm-hmm.
I've heard that from other people who have gone through a kind of evolution that you described, of gaining more awareness, right? Of about themselves, about racial dynamics and other people's experience outside of the way that you're racialized and even within. People say something very similar to that. Like, sorry, what was that last thing you just said? Because that's what
that I listen.
Right.
That I sit in rooms and don't
you intentionally pull back and make space, for people whose voices have been suppressed and people who've been marginalized. So that's pretty cool. You
also have to remember, you also have to remember that during this time, I was also coming out. Like, I came out in my late 20s. So there was a lot of self-reflection going on. There was a lot of, who am I vis-a-vis the world I live in? And how am I being put into some sort of box, right? Mm-hmm. And so that self-reflection also extended to, okay, well, who are you in terms of the world we live in, right? Like, so I think that I've always said that being gay was the best gift I ever got, because it took me out of the mainstream and gave me a totally different point of view. So there's that too. Like, I cannot discount that
interesting.
Yeah.
Also,
by the way, now I read Malcolm X and I'm like, yes, this is totally what we need. Yes. So.
Well, listen, there's so many good parts to your evolution, Carrie, and that's one of them, is that, you kind of took it upon yourself to continue listening and continue learning. A lot of people shut that part of themselves down. Mm-hmm. A lot of people consciously and intentionally choose to stop learning because they don't like what they're hearing, or they don't like what they're learning, and they'd rather hold on, to the mythology, the propaganda that you were able to let go of, so mm-hmm. Give yourself credit right there for, going through that process of the evolution, because what it does, in my opinion, is it reflects upon your values mm-hmm. as a human, mm-hmm. And, you clearly value the truth, which I appreciate. I think it's important to say that out loud at this time, where like Don Lemon's being locked up and on charges where he's accused of being a protester where he was clearly not a protester. And he couldn't even get a magistrate judge to sign off on it, so they had to bypass it. At a time like this where lies are kind of ruling the day. I think it's pretty important to honor people like yourself who have chosen a path of truth. And I'll be doing that in the future as well.
In the future, when you move, is that what you're
Well,
you're
well,
out of
yeah,
this
yeah.
country?
Well, like, and every day, like, I just mean, like, this is part of my, I also value truth, right? Like,
Right.
I wrote a whole piece about my values, right? And one of them is truth. It's probably my earliest value. When I was a kid, I was like, I want to live a life of truth.
Oh,
I want to live,
yes.
yeah, like, it's probably because I studied math. I was like a math nerd, when I was a
Oh,
kid.
I think I knew
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, and, like, when I was doing math, I just kind of, like, started understanding more and more about the nature of our reality and how things actually work and what the truth actually is, and my understanding of that actually has deepened over the years, and, yeah, I just fell in love with math, and I really think that's what made me fall in love with the truth.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What's your story of racialization? Like, I know you've told it to the audience before, but
That's okay. I mean, I'm sure
tell it
there's
to
people
me.
here who haven't heard it. Yeah.
Right.
So,
Like, when
and if
did you
anyone
realize that being Black made you different in this country?
Yeah. So, um, first of all, anyone who wants a short version of it can go on my YouTube channel, The Contraband Wagon, and watch a poem that I wrote and had an animation commission to go along with it years ago
Mhm.
now. It's called Contraband of Race War. And it kind of talks about my own evolution of race consciousness. I'll give you a little bit, I'll give you a snapshot. 6 years old, and I'd already been told the difference between black and white. VHS tapes and PBS specials taught me quite a bit about America's plight. That's how it begins, and that story is when I was 6 years old. Like I said, I had already seen from my dad taking me to the library to check out VHS tapes. I saw documentaries about the civil rights movement. So I knew Dr. King. I knew, that there was a fight for civil rights. I knew that it was about discrimination against people like me. But what I was taught at that time, or what I anyways took away at that time, was that it was something of the past, that this
Oh,
had been a settled issue. I was born in 1984 now. Okay. And yeah, that's what I learned at the beginning of the 90s. I was like, this is a thing. We had it, we solved it. Good on us. And yeah, it's something to know for history, not for the present.
fascinating.
And it was at 6 years old when I encountered that child in the hallway of my elementary school, another little black child in an all black neighborhood, all black school. And he said, "Hey, why don't you act black?" And I was like, "What do you mean by that?" And he goes, "Well, you don't curse, you get good grades, you're not in the gang." And he just starts boom, 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 rattling off all that propaganda that you were taking in,
Mm-hmm.
that he had obviously taken in from some source as well,
Mm-hmm.
and internalized and thought that that was part of his identity and that I was out of place because I didn't match that identity despite the color of my skin. It shook me to my core,
Mm-hmm.
on a bunch of different levels, you
Did you
know.
try to act Black after that? Did you try to do what you
Absolutely
wanted
not.
to do?
Remember, I had already
Okay.
chosen a value of truth at that
Okay,
time.
okay, good. Because some people,
So
most, okay.
yeah, so looking at it through that, and I was a very precocious little kid who knew algebra by the time I was 5. So you have to understand, being in that situation, I was able to ascertain the cascade of consequences for his mindset. I was also able to ascertain that I had been lied to by everyone at a deep level, because I had accepted that value of truth. Like, the disruption of that value was uh, at a spiritual dimension, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it was a life-changing experience, that small, short dialogue with that kid that gave me a curiosity about the subject of race and of myself, obviously, because I was smack dab in the middle of the discussion, it seems like.
Yeah.
Um, So yeah, so I went on a long period of self-reflection and independent investigation in the subject of race in various ways, through reading, through and studying, and through a lot of social experimentation that I did clandestinely, um, because I learned early on in my investigation that people do not take kindly to be forced to talk about the subject of race. So I,
People,
so I had
black
to find
people,
many
white
ways.
people, all people don't take kindly about. I mean, I know white people don't like to talk about race, but what are you
It,
talking
it
about?
really
Black people
varies,
also?
but yeah, mostly racialized white people, like most racialized black people don't care at all about talking about race. They will talk to you about it.
Mm.
I don't find that to be the case with racialized white people, although it has changed over time how I've experienced it. I do experience people being more open to communicating about it as time goes on and as the veil of white supremacy continues to become transparent.